All right, hello everybody. What is going on? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo podcast, part of the Blue Wire Network. I'm your host, Patrick Moran. Thank you for locking in, whether it's the audio side, the video side. Gonna get into today's show. It's a good one in a quick minute. Before that, real quick, I wanted to just a lot of people have been asking what's going on with the show in terms of dates and guests and stuff like that. It's been kind of out of whack lately, especially Fridays that I've been doing with Joe Yurden for the past year. So there's not going to be a podcast this Friday. Starting next week, Joe Yurden is going to be joining me for a show every Tuesday. So Tuesdays are going to be Joe Yurden. Casual Fridays are going to continue, but going forward, starting next Friday, I'm going to have Aaron Quinn from Cover One. That's going to be my guy for Casual Friday. So Tuesday with Joe Yurden, Fridays with Aaron Quinn, and then Wednesdays is going to be the show each week where I have a different guest. Some of them will be remote. Some of them will tape live at wing spots like we did in the past. So just want to let you guys know that. So thank you for being patient. Anyway, as for today, good friend of mine, recurring guest, writer, expected Buffalo creator, Chad DeDominicis. What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
I'm good, Pat. How are you?
I'm good, man. I appreciate you doing this. We're taping this pretty late on Wednesday night after the Sabres, or Tuesday night. I'm sorry, we're taping it after the Sabres' second last preseason game. A couple things I wanted to get into before that. We'll talk some Sabres, and you've been on before enough times to know, and people who listen enough. Chad's not just a hockey guy. I know it seems like Chad's a hockey guy because he writes about hockey, but if you follow him on Twitter, especially during Bills games, you would know this. Chad's a football guy too, so I like to kind of pick his brain a little bit and talk some football. So we'll certainly do both of those. For anything else, though, let's just jump right into something else here. So we're taping this again Tuesday. Chad and I are both New York Yankee fans, and it's been a long process, man. We've been waiting for, well, first we waited for a while for 61, and then we got that. And finally tonight, with only one game left after tonight, Aaron Judge finally hits number 62. So again, hopefully people are watching this on Wednesday. So it'll be semi-fresh. Let me play the clip real quick. I got it here. I'm going to pull it right up. If you're watching on YouTube and you haven't seen it, I'm sure you have, but I'm going to play it again anyway because it just makes me happy. Here's Aaron Judge hitting number 62. That's not the start we wanted, Aaron. I mean, Chad, here we go. Jesus, I'm all over the place. Here we go.
High fly ball, deep left. There it goes, staring into history. He's done it. He has done it. 62. Aaron Judge is the American League single-season home run leader. The AL King. Case closed.
All right. Now that we've seen that, and I'll get my head out of my ass here, we're going to the wrong video, calling Chad by Aaron. All right, I got my shit on straight a little bit here. First thoughts on seeing that. Again, this is fresh in our minds. It's just happened, an hour or two ago.
Yeah. I mean, as a Yankee fan, exciting, right? It's awesome. It's something that I thought would have happened a couple weeks ago on the page on it. But at the same time, kind of like when you get to 60, it's like, okay, now the pressure's on to hit 61 and then it hit 62. So I get it from that regard that it took a little bit longer, but yeah, and it's fun. It's exciting, to have that type of thing in today's, league basically. So, it's cool. It's fun.
You could tell the pressure was getting to him a little bit.
Yeah.
He wouldn't come on and say it. I would expect tonight or tomorrow for the next few days, he'll kind of reflect back and maybe talk about the pressure of getting 61 and then ultimately 62. Now, do you consider 60? It's undisputed. He's the AL home run king all-time single season, not the all-time single season. However, a lot of controversy. Sosa, McGuire, of course, Barry Bonds. In your book, is he the legitimate home run king, or do you still consider Barry Bonds and then even McGuire or Sosa ahead of them as the home run kings for a single season?
No, I mean, I would still consider the other guys. Look, we know those guys were cheating, but at the same time, to be fair, the pitchers were cheating too. Everybody was cheating. It's not like just those three guys were the only ones cheating at that time. Everybody was doing it. Pitchers, hitters, whatever. So in that sense of mind, that's how I've always justified it, that it was a fair playing field because everybody was doing it. It's not like it was just those guys and nobody else was cheating. So, yeah, I mean, I think they're still legitimate. The numbers count, and that's the way it goes. But, this is something that you can look at differently. It's not in the juiced era, you could say. It's kind of at a time, too, when pitching is more dominant than ever, you could say, too. So that's even more credence to judge there to get that done. But, yeah, I mean, I think a little bit of this is also hitting me. I mean, not to go down the potential bad news part of it, is it always stuff like this gets me to the off season with him. Like, okay, this would really stink if this was his last season as a Yankee, and like it's in my head. Like I in my gut, I feel like he's coming back because it's Aaron Judge, it's New York City. Like, come on, like
he just feels New York.
Yeah.
You're right. Don't get me wrong, and it is something to be concerned about because it didn't get done. End of the day, though, man, first of all, I can't see the Yankees being outbid. I mean, it's going to cost a lot of money, but I just can't see him going anywhere else. I mean, it's not even like A-Rod was a star, but A-Rod was a star to the highest. He was like a mercenary almost. You know what I mean? He'd go where the money would go. Derek Jeter just felt like the captain, the Yankee. He just epitomizes the Yankees. And I feel like Aaron Judge is kind of on that level as well now. The way he feels about New York, the way New York feels about him. Now, I don't know. We're not behind the scenes, so who knows how negotiations went and maybe it left a bad taste in his mouth at some point. I don't know. But I can't see him going anywhere else. But you never know. Now, we're both Yankee fans. Do you ramp up your excitement when it gets to be playoff time? Because I'm going to be honest with you. This gave me a reason to watch more baseball, Yankee games during the regular season because Aaron Judge was chasing the all-time record, which, again, I consider this, by the way, the all-time home run record, at least as far as I'm concerned, AL, but more importantly, just the Yankees. It was just so cool for me as a fan of the Yankees, a lifelong fan, but typically, man, I'm not really into it that much during the regular season. I don't watch that many games, but playoff time,
too many games
ramps up. Does it ramp up for you though when it gets to be playoff time?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, this is when I start to get into it. I think at the last couple of weeks of the season, I get into the playoff races, and then don't get me wrong, like I follow the team throughout the season. Like I'll watch a few games here or there. I'll go to a game. I'll go to a game or two. Like I know what's going on. Like I don't block them out forever. But yeah, I mean, this is when the playoffs start. I'm in every game, beginning to end. Like I'm in.
Yeah, me too. Now the Sabres this is dropping Wednesday, so 8 days away from the start of the regular season. Again, I've said you're a football guy, you're a Yankees fan, you watch baseball when it ramps up postseason, but at your core, you're still a hockey guy. Is this this time of year? Is this like December for you? Is this like close to Christmas? You kind of get that feeling?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. It's you kind of get that itch in September, especially this year when August August is always kind of the dog days, if you will, of the off season, and literally nothing happens. But like usually maybe you get one or two or three things, at least league wide, to talk about. When this year you got like nothing. So this summer was kind of after free agency, was really a drag. So yeah, it's when training camp started, I think really around the prospect challenge is when you really get into it. You feel hockey's coming kind of when football starts, it's around the corner. And then the fun thing about hockey training camp is like it opens on a Tuesday, and by the way, your first game's Friday. Like you're right into it, you're going. So yeah, and I'm ready. You just had Ottawa a week or 8 days from today, so it's going to be a fun season. I'm looking forward to it. Probably the most look forward to, I guess that sounds weird to say, but season probably since like maybe Eichel's second year. So yeah, I'm excited, and then the group for the site's excited too.
Now I was going to say it's one thing as a fan, just a fan of hockey, and specifically the Sabres, but in terms of your work, expected Buffalo and stuff like that, you get excited about that too, ready to ramp it up. For people who are listening or watching who might not know, tell people a little bit about expected Buffalo and some of the things that you're going to do, that you have done, and that you're going to continue to do, that are a little bit unique compared to a lot of the other blogs and things out there.
Yeah, I mean, our whole thing, for those who don't know, we're worried about the Sabres, but we kind of take a different angle from it most of the time. Not every single time, but most of the time. We're a website that focuses on the analytics side of hockey. That's our bread and butter. Anthony, myself, Eddie. That's where we cut our teeth, essentially. That's how we kind of bring a different lens than really. I mean, those net numbers are becoming more prevalent in hockey, so it's like not like it's just us like talking about it. But I think that's kind of what we do. It's what we focus on. It's what we lean into. And it goes beyond that, not only at the NHL level covering the Sabres, something I've done for a couple of years now that I'll do again this year is player tracking at the AHL level. So the unique fun thing about the AHL this year with the Amherst is there's a lot of interesting players. Luka Prusak is one. Yuri Kulich, who was just drafted in the first round this year. Isaac Rosine, who was drafted in the first round last year. Philip Cedarquist. I'm sure I'm missing guys too, but there's a long list of interesting prospects in the AHL this year. So we'll do player tracking because you don't really have advanced stats for AHL. Those aren't publicly available, so nobody really gets that. So it's kind of a unique perspective that we provide for our subscribers. It's it's not your shot quality. I'm kind of going to abandon that this year because it makes it more difficult to do that on a game-by-game basis. But it's more looking at shot attempts, basically looking at we call them microstats, but all of the ways that kind of lead to a scoring opportunity. Primary assists, secondary assists, forechecks, zone entry, zone exits, high danger chances, high danger passes, shot attempts, all those fun things that kind of the nuances that go into playing defense and creating offense are things that we'll track. And it's a manual, exhausting exercise at time, but I think it's fun, unique data set that you really can't get anywhere else.
For sure. And that's the written side, by the way. Chad and Anthony also do a podcast. There's an Expected Buffalo podcast. Let me ask you an honest question. To be honest with me, man, don't lie.
Okay.
Podcasting, you do it as part of the gig for sure. Especially when you have, especially when you and Anthony have a really good set of Expected Buffalo. You guys got a really nice following. You do the podcast. Do you truly enjoy doing a podcast, or is it something that you do again because it's part of what you offer as a brand? Like in a sense, almost everyone, if you have a blog or you work for a website, you got to have some form of podcast that accompanies it. Does it feel like that's just something that you do because you got to do it? Or do you like truly enjoy podcasts? Because I'm going to be honest, man, I've talked to a lot of people and it goes both ways. Some people love doing a podcast and some people are like, not really, but I know that's something that we got to do. How do you feel about that?
It depends, I think, on what's going on. I will say as the years have gone on here, I think we're going, because I was doing this with a friend of mine, Bill, before Anthony jumped on. When Bill stepped away, Anthony jumped in. I think this will be my 6th year doing a podcast. As every year has gone by, I think I've got less enthused by it.
That's fair. Very fair.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There's times where I can't wait to flip on the mic and talk. And a lot of it is, I'm going to do a podcast. We get the preparation ready. And then it's a day of the podcast. And I'm like, ugh. But, once you flip the mic on, talk to Anthony, then you kind of get into it. So really, It's kind of that thing where leading up to it, you really kind of don't want to do it. And then once you start doing it, okay, yeah, we're just talking hockey. We're having fun. It's just a conversation. We like to talk about this. And so we've tried to do things, to mix it up, kind of have some more fun about it. Anthony and I are kind of, if you follow us or know us, we're kind of, jokesters, if you will, in a sense.
Sure.
You try to have fun with it, especially with the team as Ben. You kind of have to have fun with it.
Sure.
Yeah. But this is going to be an interesting season. I think it's going to be different because I think this is the first season legitimately that I've covered this team, and I've been doing it for 2022, probably close to 10 years now, that I think we're going to be talking about a team that is supposed to be winning and actually doing it and being exciting. So Anthony and I have always said, we know how to cover a bad team, but I think we're going to kind of find out this year if we know how to cover, at the very least, a decent team.
A competitive
I think
team.
It's a different dynamic I think we're going to have this year.
Yeah, I never really thought of it that way. When you do a hockey podcast, especially if it's been a Sabres podcast over the last handful of years, you got to find creative ways to entertain not just your listeners, but yourself, because you're talking about a team that loses all the time. It kind of feels like maybe if you were a Bills podcaster, like you would be going into like their 2000, maybe 19 season, where they ended up making the playoffs that year, lost to Houston. But it's more fun when the team is getting good. You probably get a little more energy. I'm sort of the same way. That's why I kind of like chuckled a little bit when you say that. I still like this. Like I love talking to people like you once the camera's on and the record button's in, and I like that. The difference I would say is the years that went on, this is going to be close to 5 years now for me doing this show. The difference, and I'm being honest with you and everybody here, 2-3 years ago, like the opening of this podcast 10 minutes ago, when I butchered, put it on the wrong clip, and I called you Aaron by accident instead of Chad, I would go back afterwards and I would take the painstaking time to go find that, chop it out on the audio side, and then also on the video side, which takes even way more time than the audio side. I would go back and I would change every little imperfection during the podcast. Now I kind of have a mentality. I get up on the tee and I just grip it and rip it. You know what I mean? I don't, if I make a mistake, we're human and we have warts, you know what I mean? And I just let things go. So the probably I'm less enthusiastic about the work side, the production side of everything that comes with the podcast. Now I just hit record and whatever happens, unless it's something that's horrible and I have no choice but to go back. But a couple of years ago, if that would have happened when you and I probably would have went back and changed it. But anyway, now
podcast editing I think that might be the worst part of our podcasting is the editing part of it.
Yeah. The production part. It's fun to be a guest for the most part on someone's show because you come on, you do your thing, and then you're done. You know, when you're on the production side, like Joe Yernan, he does both sides. He comes on my show. We do Casual Fridays, which is now going to be on Tuesdays, and he's my guest. He talks and he's done, and I got to do all the bullshit work afterwards. But on Maintenance Day podcast that he does with Lance that drops on Mondays, it's the other way around.
Yeah.
Joe's doing the post-production and all that stuff. I got to put the show notes and all that other stuff together. So anyway, it is what it is. Now, also, you've been dabbing a little bit, I noticed recently, not real recently, but semi-recently. I've seen you guys dabbling around a little bit with some live stream stuff. Is that something that you're going to be doing more of going forward?
Yeah, that's yes. I think we say it every year that we want to, and I think this might be the year we actually do it. Because for the very reason you just said, I think it adds a little bit more spice to doing a podcast. Particularly because I like the interaction of having people kind of commenting while you're recording or while you're going. You know, I think the draft show we did, I think was a really good success. A lot of people like that. So it's funny. We went for 3 hours, which is insane.
I watched some of it, man. I remember you guys, there's a couple other guests. Taylor Fulton was on, Seltzer. I remember there were a couple people on for
had
a few
Chris
of those.
Ostrander on, Joe Yerden was on in the beginning. Anthony was the whole time with me. Eddie was supposed to be just a guest, but he ended up staying the entire time. We had Austin too, who's a big prospect guy. So he's really kind of our de facto prospects guy, if you will, for Expected Buffalo. He, jumps it from time to time. He was on for a while, and that was really cool because he, I could say I know about these prospects, but really beyond like the first round to maybe early second round, beyond that, no way. Where Austin can like give you full details on the guy that's picked in the 7th round. Like he watches those guys all season.
Right.
So he's one of those really in-depth draft guys. So it was kind of cool to have him on and do stuff like that. And then we did like the live prospect rankings too, that we kind of put together for Expected Buffalo and then released them as, basically we had the debate of ranking them ourselves, and then people were interacting too. So yeah, I think we want to do something more like that. I think now that COVID is, I don't want to say over, but the world considers it over. I think we've always talked about like doing more like live podcasts too, like going out somewhere and doing something like that. Because Anthony and I like to meet people and talk to people.
Yeah, me too.
So,
those are my favorite shows when I get a chance to do them live. And I think you guys are good at that. Doing a live stream, I think that's something that'll work well for you. This is where we differ a little bit, you and I, and eventually I'm going to do some live streams as well. I haven't done any to this point, but interaction wise, like my show is, I got you on and I already know what I wanted. I don't need no comments from other people. I already know what you and I are going to talk about. The difference is you're a guy, like you're almost like an analyst in a way when it comes to hockey. So if you're doing a hockey live stream, people are going to want to ask you questions. They're going
Right.
to comment
Yep.
and they're going to ask you questions because you're very much an X's and O's guys too. You know what I mean? So you
Yeah.
can answer questions live in real time. That's why I think live streams would work really, really good for you guys. And again, turn our attention to the Sabres. This should be a fun year for you guys to cover the team. Second last preseason game Tuesday night as we're taping this. They beat Carolina 4-2. Again, I watched the game. I told you this before we started taping. So many times I have Joe Yurt on the show and I bullshit my way through because I didn't actually watch the game, and Joe ends up talking about the whole thing. Just this whole entire preseason, I guess, not necessarily this one game on Tuesday night. This has been kind of like the way the season sort of ended last year. Like for an example, Tuesday night's game, tonight's game, I had fun watching it. There were times where I forgot it was a preseason game. It was like the pucks moving around, they were flying around. I was pretty entertained, especially for a preseason game tonight.
Yeah, I think they came out hot out of the gate, and that's cool. Especially being, again, it wasn't like a packed house or anything, but
right.
To have your fans in the building and to kind of
it's kind of how the crowd's been for the last few years, though.
Right.
So it's not like it's been packed houses during the regular season. But yeah.
In the first few periods, they were on fire, and I had to keep telling myself the Hurricanes brought their AHL team almost literally. So like
sure.
you have the Sabres NHL lineup against the Canes AHL lineup. So like, but I mean, a lot of these guys you could see, I was always skeptical about end of season stuff carrying over into next season. I don't know if that's really a thing. I've even done some research on it, an article I think I written a year or two ago where it's kind of not. But something with this team, it's just you could see the confidence. Darlene doesn't look like he's going to forget to play hockey the first half of the season. He still has that confidence he had last year. Tage Thompson looks unreal. So, I mean, he looks today, he looked even better than he did last year.
Yeah.
Cousins looks like he's ready to take a step. Even Middlestad looked really good in the preseason too. Well, not just tonight, but I think overall. So maybe he's ready to go if he can find this healthy. I think Jack Quinn looks really exciting. And then Owen Power, the guy is he's so impressive. And I think it's going to be so fun to watch because he's not going to do flashy things. But if you just watch him play, the things he does within a game to help you win, to generate offense, like it's unreal. And I'm sure I'll write about it many times with video clips and everything to kind of break it down and show people. But like just the way, like even just like in the offensive zone, like he keeps offensive zone time alive because of how aggressive he is pinching down from the wall. He'll retrieve a puck, regroup, and then restart the offensive cycle. And he can it's exciting, to have Darlene, if he's going to play at that level, to have Power, the level he can be at, and then all of the exciting stuff going forward. And then, oh, by the way, you have the best prospect pool in the NHL too behind all of that. Good times ahead, I think. Definitely good times ahead.
I want to talk to you about the line combinations that Granato has out right now. And I think he said something along the lines. I'm completely paraphrasing, but this is what he thinks he might go into the season with, or what he's looking to. He's not going to mess around with it much. Let me read these off to you and get your thoughts on them. So these were the Sabres 4 lines of practice, and then in the game Tuesday night here against Carolina. So Skinner and Thompson stay together, and they're with Olofsson. And then you have Middlestad, who's centering Alex Tuck and Jack Quinn, who you talked about. And then that third line, you got Cousins, who's centering JJ Peterka and Peyton Krebs. Which I want to ask you about that line specifically because Anthony, your partner in Expected Buffalo, I was reading a couple of his tweets earlier Tuesday. And then the fourth line is Gergensen centering Okposo and Asplund. I want to get your general thoughts on those 4 lines, and more specifically that line of Cousins, Peterka, and Krebs. And Anthony was expressing a little bit of concern because of maybe the defensive side of that line, those guys being young and nobody really proven as a two-way player yet. But anyway, I wanted to get your thoughts on these lines and specifically that one. What do you think?
Yeah, I get what Anthony was saying. I don't wholeheartedly agree, I guess you could say. I don't agree. Just I found it interesting that they're going to kind of try to rebuild that log line like when Larson was here, but with Gergensen and Oposo, but instead of Larson, it's going to be Asplund now. I thought he kind of made sense as a guy like he did last year, played up the lineup as a nice defensive player for the younger guys and kind of solidify those lines with younger players. So much so that he received Selke votes last year. That's how good he was defensively. But it looks like they're going to kind of go back to, building that de facto log line, if you will, but not with Aspen there. So that's fine. That first line with Tuck, Skinner, and Olofsson is going to be very interesting because when they played together last season, look at their numbers. Offensively, they were really good. But defensively, they almost gave it all back because they were pretty bad defensively. Now, you can do things with that to, how you deploy them situationally, the defensive group you put around them. You can do things to mitigate that. And maybe, I think Thompson played really good today defensively as a centerman. So maybe, in his second year as a centerman, he kind of takes on more of the defensive roles, understands it, and you get a step there, and overall that helps your team defensively. So that makes sense. While that group's probably going to get back together. The Middlestat, Quinn, and Tuck line. I think they're using Tuck essentially as the guy to protect Middlestat and Quinn. Similar to what he did with Skinner and Thompson last year. Tuck is unbelievable how important he is to this team. It's really hard to describe. So I really like that group today, the three of them together. I think that makes sense going into the season. And then the Cousins line is going to be interesting. We'll see. We'll see if it's going to be Paterka or Hinostroza on that one wing. Honestly, it wouldn't stun me if Hinostroza starts over Paterka and Paterka ends up in the AHL, but we'll see how that goes. And then the other winger being Krebs, I believe.
Yeah.
Granato likes to put a lot of pressure on Cousins. He likes to, if you remember last season, Cousins was playing against McDavid on some nights. That was the matchup, right? He played against McDavid. He plays against Crosby. The other team's top line. He gave him that responsibility. He gave him that pressure. And some nights it went really well. Some nights it went pretty poor. And I think this season he's relying on Cousins, being his third year in the league, to kind of take that step. And I think from what I've seen in the preseason, he's just looked really good. I think he's ready to do that. I think he's improved his game defensively. I think he starts to understand now what he can and cannot do on the rush. And I think that's also going to result in higher goal scoring numbers. So while I think that one line might be on an island at times, and it could be a little bit sketchy, I have utmost confidence in Cousins. He's my breakout guy this year. I was saying it in the end of last year and all off season. He's my breakout guy this year, and I'm still pretty confident that's going to happen.
Let's where do I want to go with this? I want to circle back when you talked about Hinostroza. Now again, preseason is preseason, and they were basically playing an AHL team. For what it's worth, Hinostroza scored a goal tonight. A really nice feed from Tage Thompson. Cousins also scored. I believe it was shorthanded too. He scored a goal.
He did, yes,
tonight as well. And then we mentioned Paterka. He scored into an empty net to clinch the victory. And then Thompson had a really nice breakaway goal. Those were the 4 goals for the Sabres tonight. But anyway, so you can see Hinostroza initially starting while Paterka goes into the AHL because, I've talked about this with Joe a few times, and there weren't a lot of mysteries. I'm sure you agree with this. There weren't a lot of mysteries and training camp plots going into this preseason and camp. Not a lot of, I don't know what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
But so if there was one to me, it was Quinn and Paterka, but I was reasonably confident that Quinn was going to start in Buffalo right from the beginning. It certainly appears to be that's going to be the case. But Paterka, it's like if he doesn't have a certain role, you think it might be better for him to go to Rochester to start the season. If you were Granato and you were in charge of making this decision, and these were your guys and your decisions to make with this lineup, what would you do with JJ Paterka right now?
It's so hard. Honestly, we don't know yet, but Granato might have, not in a good way, might get an out on this depending on what Oposo's injury is because he didn't play in the third period today. So if he's going to miss any sort of time here, I think Granato gets out of making his decision because then you can keep both of them up. Mm-hmm. But if everybody's healthy, it's funny because I think last year Paterka deserved to make this roster, and they made the decision better for his development that he starts in the AHL. this season we can have an opposite situation where I think he's actually played relatively poorly in the preseason games he's played in, but I still think he can still make the team. So it's interesting how that dynamic might actually work out. But if I'm Granato, I would probably put Paterka down there and tell him he's my first call up based on things that we've seen. I think he's struggled with a few things, in terms of defensively, in terms of decision make with the puck. I think he's seeing that it's more difficult to beat a NHL defender than it was an AHL defender, because down in the AHL, you kind of just, I'm faster, bigger, stronger than you, and I'm just going to skate by you. But that doesn't really work at the NHL level necessarily. And don't get me wrong, the AHL team is going to be loaded with a lot of young guys too, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think when you drafted Paterka in the second round 2 years ago, if you would have said he's borderline NHL player by year two, I think you'd have been pretty excited with that. So, it's tough because of this season he had last year. One of right behind Jack Quinn, excellent rookie season. You can make an argument those are the two best rookies in minor hockey last year, and they're 19 years old. So I just, it's hard to push Hinostroza out. I think he gives you certain things from a veteran aspect. I think he's a speed guy. I think at least to start the season, to make sure your team gets off on the right foot, to have Hinostroza to do that. And then as injuries are going to happen, we might even have one already. And then tell Paterka, you're the first call up. Let's go down there and work on some of these things you struggled with in the preseason. And then you're my first call up when something happens, and we'll get you right back up here. So
plus, yeah, to your point, it's not like they're punting the present by playing Hinostroza now. He's a serviceable player.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Bjork's your extra forward, correct, to start the season?
Shane, my extra forward to start the season. I legitimately think that they're going to waive Bjork.
Yeah.
I just don't think this organization has any more use for him anymore.
Okay.
And if someone claims him, then whenever. If not, then he goes on to the AHL. I think Riley Shane is right now, I would say, is your 13th forward.
Okay. And captain, Okposo?
Okposo.
Yeah, for sure.
Okposo this year, Dowling next year.
And with Owen Power, you spoke of him. He's going to be playing with Yoki Haru to start the season. How do you feel about that combination? I mean, it's not like there's a ton of options right now for him, but that's what they're doing.
Yoki Haru scares me. He has not been good in the preseason. He was not good last year until Power arrived. And he started to play better with Power. So maybe you hope. Well, I shouldn't say Yoki Haru, I think, was fine tonight. He made one bad mistake, one rough pass. But other than that, he wasn't really noticeable, which is a good thing. That's what you want from him. But yeah, Yoki Haru scares me a little bit. Especially when, your right side of your defense is kind of shallow. For the Sabres, they have Labushkin, who's a right shot defenseman. It's nice that you have Dowling, who can play on the right side now, and then Samuelson on the left. Bryson kind of gives that flexibility to play on the right side. I think Casey Fitzgerald's a right shot defenseman, but I don't know. I think at the end of the day, he's a seventh defenseman for you at best. Then there's really not much in your organization behind him. There's Oskari Laaksonen, who, I don't know, the guy really still can't figure out how to defend at the pro level, so I'm not really thinking much out of him. So, if Yoki Haru doesn't work out, it puts him in a tough spot on the right side. They have options if it doesn't. And like I said, Bryson, then you can move Pilot up here on the left side, and it works out for you. But, yeah, I'm just hoping Power can keep Yoki Haru where he was in that small sample size last season.
One last question with involving the Sabres. I wanted to ask you about the goaltender, Eric Comrie, the new addition. Haven't seen too much of him, obviously, during the preseason, but from what you have seen or from camp and just everything you've seen and read and heard, how are you feeling about him going into the season? And do you think he has that ability? Maybe not necessarily to be, undisputed number one who's going to play 60, 65 games, but just as even if he's the 1A goaltender going into this season, what have you seen from him? What are you thinking?
Yeah, he's in a sense, Comrie's my guy. He's the guy that I kind of petitioned for.
Yeah, I remember that
all off season. So
I remember.
I think a lot of the season rides on how good he's going to be. I'd be lying if I said I'm 100% confident that he's going to be as good as he was as the backup in Winnipeg last year, because I don't know. But if you look at his numbers and small sample sizes, they're impressive. And it's not only NHL level, it's the AHL level too. So, I like the way he moves in net. I like the way he is positionally. I thought he played really good against Columbus. I know there's 4 goals that were let up against him, but kind of what you saw happen to Carolina tonight from Buffalo happened in Columbus to the Sabres. He was shelled almost the entire night. I think he made a lot of good saves. That game could have been 8-7 to 1 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he played relatively well in that game. And we'll see. It's goaltending has been a thing in Buffalo for years. So you hope for the best, and that's all you really can do with goaltenders in the NHL. It's so up and down from year to year. It's the hardest thing to predict in this league. So you kind of just cross your fingers and you hope for the best.
Sounds good. All right, we're going to take a quick break, come back on the other side. I'll have Chad. We're going to actually talk a couple minutes worth of Buffalo Bills. Be right back, folks. All right, I am back with Chad DeDominicis from Expected Buffalo. All right, so let's turn our attention for a few minutes here, talking about the Buffalo Bills. We're a month in, 4 weeks in, 3-1. I would venture to say, if I asked you before the season started, what would you think the Bills would be after 4 games? And you said 3. I told you they'd be 3-1. You'd be like, yeah, pretty much sounds about right.
Yep.
What's been a couple of your biggest takeaways through the first month of the season? And then I got a handful of things, both good and bad, that I wanted to hit on and get your reaction. But like maybe so far through the first month, your biggest takeaway.
Josh Allen is really good. I mean, that's maybe number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Sure.
I don't even know what to say. Like, it's the arc this guy has taken from where he was when he first entered this league to now, maybe with no exaggeration ever. But I mean, no exaggeration right now. Almost unstoppable, literally. The only way he is stopped in most cases is either by extreme heat, and even that didn't really slow him down that much, or a turnover. There is, like, other than that, you really don't stop this guy. No. And it's wild. He does what he wants when he wants. It's insane. Puts the ball anywhere he wants. He'll run wherever he wants. You're not going to tackle him. He's going to run over you. It's insanity. It's insanity. So that's the top takeaway.
100%.
The other takeaways I have is the defense is really impressive. And you talk, even the Bills' offense is obviously the focus, but then you follow that up with, I think this defense is better than it might be the best defense McDermott has had. I mean, they're playing as well as they are right now. I mean, even look against Lamar Jackson or other good quarterbacks they faced. They're playing as good as they are right now without Hyde, without Trey White, without Oliver, without Phillips. Like, then they were playing a UB, undrafted free agent a couple of weeks ago. And, they don't have their main guys. Benford got hurt when he looked good. Like, they don't have their big guys, and they're still just a dominant defensive force. And it's not like last year. It's not against bad quarterbacks. It's Stafford. It's Tannehill's. It's Tua, who's had a good season. It's Lamar Jackson. Like, the first bad quarterback you can, like, quote unquote bad, they're going to receive is Kenny Pickett this week. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, when you put that together, it's just it gets to have the Super Bowl favorite, right? When you add all of that up. But I think there's issues within that. I think, not from the defensive side, but maybe the offensive side. I think the running back situation beyond Singletary is something to be concerned about. I think the wide receiver depth, especially with Gabe Davis being hobbled, can become a problem. So I think from an offensive standpoint, that'd be my 2 areas of concern. The running back situation behind Singletary, and I think the depth at wide receiver.
I want to circle back to a couple points that you hit on, but more so than anything else with Josh Allen, because I agree. He's playing at a level that's so good, it's almost easy to take it for granted. Now it's expected for him to go out and do what he did. And let's even just talk about that Baltimore game for a minute, because especially in the first half, now guys were dropping balls, but he was also a little too amped up. I watched Isaiah McKenzie. In fact, shout out Tyler Dunn. I went to Mister's on Monday night. He has the Isaiah McKenzie show he does with him. And Isaiah was talking about Josh was throwing the ball too hard. He pretty much just said that straight up.
Oh, yeah. He was whipping it in there.
Everybody. He was whipping the ball. He wasn't taking anything off of
Yeah.
it. And Isaiah said between the rain and everything, it was just really hard to catch the ball. He was too amped up. But anyway, my point was this. He makes plays when he has to, like that touchdown run. Or forget about the touchdown run. It was a 4th down conversion, 4th and 1. They snuffed the play out. He rolled out to the left. He got the guy up with the fake, and then and got the first down. He ran for that touchdown. He evaded a sack twice and hit Shakir along the sidelines on a 2nd and 3 right before the 2-minute warning. It reminded me in ways of the Kansas City game in the playoffs last year. And to your point, we say unstoppable. When he's playing like that, he legitimately is unstoppable. His career development and how good he got now compared to what he was coming into the league, I think there's very few quarterbacks ever. And I've heard a lot of sports media people say this who cover the league. There's been very few quarterbacks who have developed at a level who've went from here to here like Josh Allen ever has. And he's so good now that every time you see a quarterback come into the league and they don't play well early on, because Josh's stats were not good early on. You take a Justin Fields and you're like, well, his stats after 20 games is this, that, and the other, and people are saying, well, Josh Allen's stats are only this and that. But there's not a lot of people who come into the league and develop like Josh Allen does. It's so damn easy to take how good he is for granted, man.
Yeah.
And that was my number one takeaway too. And I wrote this in my notes, like money, getting the big contract and the hype, all the offseason hype, playing with Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and Mahomes on national TV, golf, and all the accolades and the predictions of him winning MVP. You would be like, I was a little concerned going into the season that is this going to get in his head just a little bit? Because it would be easy to do that. The answer so far is hell no, man. He's
the guy's so down to earth, man.
He is, dude. He really is. That's a good thing. I got a handful of good things. Some of them you talked about. I think Von Miller's as good as advertised.
Yep.
He's got 3 sacks already. He had 2 in the first game, and it's not even the stats. And we said this before the season. Don't look at how many sacks he has. It's when he gets them, when they're going to matter the most in the biggest moments. He's going to make his teammates around him better. I think that's certainly the case. So I think Von Miller's been as good as advertised. I think Gregory Rousseau is clearly taking the next step. Yep. He's already got 4 sacks this year. He's got at least a half a sack in all 4 games. He looks really good. And he's a really good edge setter in defending the run, too. So he's not just the guy who gets after the quarterback. We talked about Josh Allen. I brought up Isaiah McKenzie. It's another good point that I think so far this year. He's what do you think of Isaiah McKenzie? I think he's functioning just fine in the slot. Now, I did tweet out Sunday because I was annoyed because these guys were dropping the freaking football over the place. And Isaiah does make mistakes. Like he caught one pass. I remember it too. He caught a pass on 2nd down instead of falling forward for the first down like Cole Beasley always did. He kind of took a step back, got tackled for the loss, and then they got stuffed and didn't convert and ended up having a punt. Ooh, I was pissed off. I tweeted something about the Bills, missing that Cole Beasley, but again, that was kind of an idiot knee-jerk reaction from me. McKenzie's put up good numbers, man. I think he just looked just fine in the slide, and he scored 2 touchdowns. What do you think of his game so far this year?
Yeah, I don't. He's been what he's been the last year or so. I don't know if he's a full-time slot guy for you. I honestly think there's more they can do with him. Jet sweeps, getting him in space more. I think there's more of that. You can even make him more of an impact player. But yeah, I mean, I don't have any issues with what he's brought to this team, what he's done. He's a good red zone threat. It's shown. And I think because, of his size, he kind of can get lost like in bunch situations or on, I don't want to say screens, not really a screen, but like on motion plays, I think he can get lost in the red zone because of his size. So, I think that's an advantage to you. So yeah, I don't have any issues at all with how he's played. I think he's been what you would kind of hope for.
Yeah, and 2 other things too. I think for the most part, I think the Bills' depth this year, which has certainly been tested.
Yeah,
we talked about a lot of the injuries. I think the depth's been pretty good. Damar Hamlin's been all right. Jaquan Johnson did some good things in Miami, a couple of mistakes too. But anyway, these guys are just forcing the action. Benford, before he got hurt, on the defensive end, got guys like Boogie Basham's done some things. Shaq Lawson had a key play in that game. That interception by Jordan Poyer in the end zone, the second Poyer interception, that doesn't happen if Shaq Lawson doesn't force Lamar Jackson out of the pocket and make him throw on the run. So little key things like that. The offensive line's been tested already. Quentin Morris has done some things. Reggie Gilliam has done some positive things. So this team's pretty deep. It's not like I look at teams like say the Rams last year, who won it all, but the Rams are very like top heavy. There's some teams in the league that got 3 or 4 superstars and they're top heavy, and then the talent level really dips. I feel like this Bills team is really, really deep, and we're seeing that through the first month. And then the last thing, and I don't know if I want to get your opinion on this too, because some people thought it was an overblown stat that didn't mean shit, but the Bills have lost a lot of one-score games. They were either 0-7 or 0-8. They've either lost 7 or 8. I can't remember what it is in a row. One-score games. Was it 7?
Yeah.
And the chatter was, and don't get me wrong, I created some of the chatter myself. I was questioning the same thing. I'm like, either the Bills run you out of the stadium with their talent, or you punch them in the face. It gets to the fourth quarter. It's a close game, and they're finding ways to lose. So anyway, this win in Baltimore, I'm glad they won the way they did. I'm happier that they won the way they did. If they would have won in the Baltimore and won 41-10, I would have been like, all right, cool. We're the better team. And we showed it. Great. But the fact that they had to come back, they played ugly. They came back. It was a close game, fourth quarter, last drive. They score and they win. That meant a lot. I think that gets the monkey off their back. And I don't know if they'll admit it or not, but I think that might have been something that was weighing on them a little bit. Oh, shit, it's the last 5 minutes. And, what's going to happen now? What do you think about that? Do you think that was exaggerated, or do you think that was real?
So I guess it's funny, two hockey guys. I think Kevin and I kind of pushed a lot of that conversation. In terms, it wasn't really. It's not the record, okay? The record. There's flukes within it, and I understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't so much the record for me. I think it's one thing that you said. I think I want to see them do it, for them mentally going into because this year is about one thing. It's winning a Super Bowl. So that's what my focus is. And I wanted them to have 1, 2, 3 games where they have those close games and they pull them out. I think mentally going into the playoffs, because I think that's when it tightens up. You're not going to win every single game 41-10 in the playoffs. You're not going to have a Patriots game every single one, Patrick Mahomes is still out there playing football, and you're probably going to run into him again. Hopefully in your building this time, but you're probably going to run into him again, and you got to be ready to play a close game. So that was one aspect of it. I think the other aspect of it is, you can just say Kansas City. I mean, it's the difference. The room for error in winning a Super Bowl is so thin that those small decisions of a 4%, 5% or less chance of winning can be the difference between a Super Bowl or not. So my thing has always been, not always been, but recently kind of is I think the team itself, Josh, he won that game for them twice last year. So I think he's shown that he can do that. I think the defense has to show, and they've done it recently, that they can lock teams down in close games. I think it did it against the Rams. It did it against the Ravens. So we've seen that. So that's good. So then the last thing maybe I need to see is if McDermott is up to it again. Because I think 2 years in a row now in Kansas City, he hasn't been up to it.
Right.
I think the first year he played scared and they lost.
Mm-hmm.
The second year, there were 1 or 2 decisions within the game that were questionable.
You're being really nice. Calling it questionable is being really nice, by the way.
In my mind, when you're playing Patrick Mahomes, you never assume you're getting a stop. So you should be trying to score touchdowns every single chance you get.
Mm-hmm.
In that type of game, whether you're on Kansas City side or you're on Buffalo side, if you force the other offense to kick a field goal, that is a stop. That counts as a stop. So, but even with those bad decisions, they were at the point to win the football game. And that team lost. And you will not convince me otherwise. That team lost because of that coaching staff. That is why that team lost that game. No other reason.
You will not get an argument from me. I have went at it with people literally off season, the entire off season. I like Sean McDermott as a character.
I do too. He makes a lot of good choices.
He does.
He is 95% of the time, he makes the right call. He is aggressive. He needs to be aggressive.
Right.
But it's that 5%, and that 5% seems to always come when it matters and when it's tight.
Yeah. There's no question. Anyone who could come away with any conclusion other than Sean McDermott gagged away the last 13 seconds of that playoff game, you're overthinking it. You could have a whole entire spreadsheet full of facts, figures, and numbers. Sean McDermott gagged away those last 13 seconds at Kansas City. Now, coaches have done that in the past. He's not the first coach to do that. And he'll have plenty of opportunities, hopefully, especially this year, to redeem himself. Andy Reid was known as a guy who couldn't win a big game for quite a while, and then Andy Reid won the big game, and now people don't say that shit no more. Hopefully that'll be what happens with Sean McDermott for sure.
Absolutely.
But I do. I agree with you, and I think championship teams, any championship team in any sport, I think there's an element of luck involved. You're going to win ugly, close games. I don't care who you are. Even the Edmonton Oilers, the Wayne Gretzky years when they would win the cup every single year, it felt like. I'm sure they won close games, and even in maybe not. Maybe they did win 8-1 every game. Maybe the Edmonton Oilers of the 80s is the wrong team to be comparing to. But you know what I'm saying, man. You gotta win those close, ugly games, get ugly. I feel like the Bills won a game they should have lost. Just like the week before they lost or they lost a game that they absolutely should have won. Yeah. So kind of balanced out. Negative side, well, you hit on it already. Injuries, man. Micah Hyde gone. I hate that Ed Oliver hasn't played except for the first half of the first game. I think he's one of the better defensive tackles in the NFL, and I'm just dying to see it again on Jordan Phillips. What a difference maker he is. It's so funny, too, because he was so good with the Bills, but they didn't want to pay him, understandably so at the time. They let him walk. He goes to Arizona. He does absolutely shit in Arizona, comes back to Buffalo, and he's a beast again. It's just crazy how much he wanted to play. But anyway, he's messed. Mitch Morse has not been 100%. He missed the Miami game, which was huge. Jordan Poyer didn't play in the Miami game. You can make a very, very strong case that the Bills are 4-0. Forget all the other guys. Just if Jordan Poyer plays, he probably makes a play at some point in that game. That's what he's been doing all year.
That 3rd and 22 probably doesn't happen if Poyer's in the lineup.
Right. Yeah, Jaquan Johnson on that one play by Waddle, he got smoked. And then the other thing, which is kind of a two-parter, Gabe Davis is playing, but he's still not healthy. And I'm telling you, man, this is a concern of mine. If I'm the Bills, and I've said this for 2 weeks running, and I'm going to really bang that drum this week, I would not play him this week. Get him healthy because you're playing Kansas City and Green Bay after that. Dude, there's not a bigger Gabe Davis fan on the Twitter app than me. I love Gabe Davis. I've been saying that dude could be the next Mike Evans for well over a year now, before the Kansas City playoff game. But I watch him and I know him, and he ain't right. In fact, look, I saw him on Monday night at Barbell, and I'm not gonna say he was limping, but you could just tell when someone's still walking a little gingerly, and he clearly is not 100%. And you're seeing it. He didn't drop a touchdown in Miami, but he had 2 hands on a ball that got knocked out that the Gabe Davis I know comes down with. He had 2 drops in Baltimore. He's not getting any separation at all. It's almost like he's some kind of decoy out there or something.
To be fair, he never really ever got separation. That's not really his game.
That's true. He's a contestant. You're right. No, you're 100% right. But it just feels to me, without a healthy Gabe Davis to get downfield and throw that ball and sling it around, the Bills have almost become like a dink and dunk offense these last couple weeks. Now, it's been effective. They should have won in Miami. They did win in Baltimore, but there's just an element when Gabe Davis, and you kind of hit on this, when he's not in that lineup, that depth, they don't have a Gabe Davis replacement. I mean, obviously they don't have a Diggs replacement either, but McKenzie, Shakir, Crowder, who's got a broken ankle, they're kind of semi-interchangeable. But Gabe Davis, especially, and Diggs, I don't know, man. The depth is a little bit of concern. And I don't know if you're McDermott, you kind of looked at me like you would not sit Gabe Davis. Do you disagree with me? Does he play through it? What do you do with him? He's not right. We both agree on that. He's not 100%, and it shows.
I don't think you're wrong in your thought process. The problem you have here is, I think you said it, you have Crowder has a broken ankle, and you have McKenzie in the concussion protocol.
Yeah.
And Kumero's out. So you're down 2 receivers, Kumero and Crowder, and McKenzie's questionable. Does he play? Probably. But the concussion, you don't know for sure.
True.
So, and you're on that point. Okay, then you're going to say Gabe Davis. Then what? You're going to have Diggs and Shakir and Isaiah Hodgins? Like,
Javon Austin.
It's
you're right, but to your point, you're right.
It's Pittsburgh. You probably should still win, but I think that's getting close to playing with fire kind of territory. It's putting a lot on Josh's shoulders. So I mean it. I guess that the bye being really, I think maybe is going to help, because after the Kansas City game you get that bye, so you maybe just kind of grit them through the next 2 weeks and then really rest them up in that bye before the Green Bay game.
He was, I mean, you look at Gabe Davis, healthy Gabe Davis, the end of last year, that Kansas City game, I mean, what more can you say? And even
in the
first
Rams game, he did.
The Rams game, he
yeah.
scored the first touchdown. He was basically unguardable. And he ain't gonna get double teamed because you got Stephon Diggs on the other side. You know what I mean? So there's not much you could do about it. But he's just, you're right. He's not a guy who gets a lot of separation. He's not a crisp route runner. He's no Stephon Diggs. You know, he's not like that. But he's just,
and for what it's worth, a bad ankle doesn't mean your hands are broken. The dude's got to catch balls.
I know, and that
bad ankle or not. Like,
I've talked about that too. I wonder out loud. It's like, this is affecting him physically. Obviously, I'm wondering if I wonder if the ankle is affecting him a little bit mentally as well, because drops are kind of, to some extent, are mental lapses, unless of course Josh Allen is gunning a ball full speed at you when you're 6 feet away. But these drops he had, they weren't the hardest throws either. Like Jamison Crowder had a drop on Sunday, and that's because I thought Josh Allen was going to take his head off with a throw on third down on that slant. And then the last point, which is something else you hit on, where I go on the negative side through the first month. Devin Singletary aside, and even him to an extent, the running game's just atrocious, man. I mean, it is really bad. Zach Moss had a 43-yard run. Great,
good things happened. Run because he didn't play in an hour, and the rest of everyone else in the field was exhausted. So that's why he had a 43-yard run, because he was the freshest guy in the field.
Give me a hockey comparison to when the Sabres, or when the Bills, they'll bring out Singletary, they'll bring out Cook, and then every once in a while they'll bring out Zach Moss, and he just smashes into the middle of the defense for a 1-yard gain. I don't know. That's like going to a hockey game and paying good money and watching a game that's 0-0, like halfway through the third period or something. Just a waste. That's what it's almost like the Bills are throwing a white flag in on a drive. Whenever you bring in Zach Moss and you run him up the middle, you're just begging to punt, which the Bills obviously don't do often. And to me, it's like, this guy can't get a yard, and short. He's not. I mean, they're not even really giving many opportunities in short yardage. When he has, he's been stuffed. If Zach Moss can't get you these tough yards up the middle, he literally has no use of being on this roster to me. And I'm at a point now where, if you're not going to run Zach Moss, or if he's not going to be effective for you and he can't do what you want him to do, get him out. Don't even have him in the lineup. And James Cook, the rookie, which actually, you know what? Let's talk about that separately. Have you seen enough of Zach Moss? I don't know what else to say. I mean, I know that's a kind of lame question, but what's he going to do that differently that from what you've seen that he hasn't done already? I mean,
they could maybe talk him up as when they drafted him, I could see maybe as a short distance back.
Yeah,
but he can't even do that.
I liked him coming out. I was pumped. I was calling him RB1.
Yeah,
I remember.
Here's my thing. Look, sure, I can say I've seen enough of Zach Moss, and fine, you can do that. Look, if you're, it gets difficult at this point because you'd have to open a roster spot. I think Duke Johnson got some game in him still.
Thank you. That's what I was coming with next. You beat me to it.
Do you maybe want to see? Like, he played pretty good for, I think it was the Dolphins at the end of last season. I thought he had a pretty good training camp.
Yeah.
He catches balls out of the backfield. He can run for you. I mean, you have to cut somebody to open a roster spot. He's on your practice
Zach
squad,
Moss.
But are they going to? I mean, can you trade him? I would say probably
he's got no value. Unless the Giants liked him, obviously the staff, and then Brian Dable, if for some reason he liked him.
Maybe you can call him and see if they want him as a backup for Barkley, maybe.
I mean, of course, who doesn't want Saquon Barkley? I think that's a fan in media. I'd be stunned if the Giants were going to seriously trade him. The Giants are 3-1 right now. You know what I mean? What their fans would do if they traded Saquon Barkley.
The Bills are not trading for a running back. They're not trading for a running back.
They're not. And the Giants, I don't see them trading Saquon Barkley either, especially being 3-1. But to your point about Duke Williams, take your pick, flip a coin. Either you could cut Zach Moss, or here's the other thing. And this is, I think Sean McDermott's done a good job of handling rookies. Like Benford earned the start over the season over Elam, and I like that. I think that's pretty. I admire that he didn't just hand the job to the first round pick. He gave it to a 6th round guy who earned it. I like that. As much as I like Khalil Shakir, we saw some good things from him on Sunday, and I think now we're going to get an opportunity to see more from him going forward. But I had no problem with them going with Jamison Crowder. He's a veteran who's done some good things in this league to begin the season anyway, who's proven himself. And they've had a shitload of problems at punt returner, and he's a steady hand punt returner. So I get that. But with James Cook, and this is the one thing where I think Sean McDermott's doing a bad job of managing his rookies on this roster. So he plays against the Rams. He fumbles. Bye-bye. See you next week, right? That's literally what happened.
Right.
He plays a little bit against the Titans. He has a good game against Miami. I think he caught a couple, like 5 passes or some shit like that against Miami. And then fast forward last week to Baltimore. He drops a pass. He does not see the ball again the rest of the game. He's a rookie, a 2nd round rookie. So you expect good things from him, but he's a rookie. And do you feel like maybe at this point now, make a mistake, you get benched? I make a mistake 2 weeks later, I get benched. It's like, it's got to mess with your confidence as a rookie, man. And it's like, are you playing at that point afraid to make a mistake is what I'm saying. Instead of playing loose and hard and free, you might be tight because you're afraid that you're going to make a mistake. And if you make one mistake, you're going to get benched. I hate that. And if that is going to continue to be the case, now you don't cut him, obviously, but maybe you make him inactive. You find a way to get Duke Williams on the active roster. You got to keep Moss if you're stuck with him. Maybe the Bills like him more than you and I do. And you have Moss, Singletary, and Duke Johnson, and you just have James Cook inactive. Because if he's one mistake away from not playing again for the rest of the game, then I don't even think he should be dressing.
Yeah.
Have a vote of confidence in him. That's what I'm saying.
I think they're not. Yeah, by handling it that way, I think they're not allowing him to get enough flow. We kind of saw in tennis against Tennessee. I know the game didn't matter and it was way out of hand. But when he got a lot of carries and he was in the game for a while, he kind of got into a flow a little bit. So I think this Steelers game, especially if you're going to be short-handed wide receivers, is a game that you can get him into. Allow him to get some carries. And don't get me wrong, this isn't the season to work on developing your 2nd-round running back. But if you're going to do it, October is the time to do it. See what you have there. Get him, maybe the next 2 weeks, see if you can get him going here against Pittsburgh, and then maybe you can bring him out as a weapon against Kansas City, and then go into your bye and evaluate. If he doesn't get going in Pittsburgh, then I guess maybe you don't play him against Kansas City really, and then you evaluate in your bye. But yeah, I'm hoping that this week against the Steelers that they try to get him going. The weather at this point looks like it's going to be decent, so there's not going to be any rain to deal with. Yeah, I would try to get him going, try to get him in a flow. But I'm with you. If I never see Zach Moss again, that's fine with me. I don't need to see him out there. He does no purpose for me. That serves me no purpose. I would absolutely play Singletary the most by far out of any of them at this point. But I think if you want to mix in some difference, I think you got to try Cook here. And then if not, the guy, like I said, you have Duke Johnson sitting there. I think the dude's got some game still, and I wouldn't be afraid to look at it.
Let me be clear too. By no means I don't want James Cook inactive. I just want him out there, and I want the coach to have confidence in him that if he drops a pass, that it's not the last pass he's going to get that game. I don't even know. I didn't look at a snap count, but I guarantee he played maybe 2 snaps the rest of the game after you dropped that pass. Literally didn't play. And Singletary's the best of this group, but I'm not even really sold on him, which he's going to be a free agent after this year. We'll see how that plays out. I mean, he made mistakes in Baltimore. He made bench-worthy mistakes. I think it was in a matter of 3 or 4 different plays. He dropped the pass, and then he lost a fumble, which Baltimore, I believe, they scored a touchdown on too. So, I mean, but what are you going to do when you got Zach Moss and he's giving you nothing, and you got James Cook, who the team doesn't trust as a rookie right now? You got no choice but to go back to Singletary.
Yeah, right. Yep.
So I don't know, man. It's been an interesting month though, the first month of the season, and I'll say this: Pittsburgh. There's no reason to not lose. I mean, there's no excuse I could possibly make to lose to Pittsburgh and a guy starting his first game, but they have played the Bills tough. Now, of course, TJ Watt not being there is going to be a big deal as well. But
and they got some other key guys in that defense beat up too. So
yeah. I mean, this is a game the Bills should win going away. And I like your point. If there's a game to get James Cook going, this feels like and Shakir too. I would say this would be a great week for the Bills rookies. All right, everybody, give Chad a follow on Twitter at CM DeDominicis. Check out Expected Buffalo. I have links for all that stuff in the show notes as well. Thanks, buddy, man. I always appreciate you having on the podcast. And again, everyone, make sure you check out Expected Buffalo. Sorry for butchering the Aaron Judge shit at the beginning of the show. And calling you Aaron. One of my favorites, Chad DeDominicis. Thanks, buddy. Always good to have you on, man.
Anytime, man. Thanks.